1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Guys!
In a row?
Welcome back to Nine Guys Dynasty Football, presented by Seize the Gap. I'm Magna Mills, and I'm here with my Dynasty Football reactions from Week 6 of the 2025 NFL season. Thank you for checking out Nine Guys Dynasty Football. We are presented by Seize the Gap. Find our content wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Seize the Gap FF and on the web at seizethegapff.com. Simple, easy to remember, just like the flaps, FLAPS. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please remember to touch the thumb. I'm going to go through the Week 6 games, starting with my Eagles losing on Thursday Night Football to the Giants. Probably not a lot of dynasty takeaways on the Eagles side of the ball. Right now, it's tough to feel good about starting anybody other than Jalen Hurts. You probably have to start Barkley. You probably want to start A.J. Brown. Actually, I think you can start Dallas Goedert right now. Shout out Dallas Goedert, who's quietly having a very nice season here, setting himself up for a bit of a payday as a free agent next year. I don't think the Eagles will keep him. I would like them to, but right now, it's very apparent that the Eagles cannot feed all these mouths. They can't do the Saquon Barkley thing and keep everybody happy, so no idea how it's going to shake out. Unfortunately, as a dynasty owner, if you own any of these guys, you are pretty much stuck just holding them right now and waiting to see what happens. On the Giants side, you have to feel very encouraged if you took the plunge on Jackson Dart or Cam Scadaboo in your rookie drafts. I am holding strongly. If I drafted any of them, you could try to acquire them, but good luck. I think at this point, I would clearly take Dart over Cam Ward. I do still like Ward, but it does feel like it could be a while before he is going to be even a guy you can feel semi-comfortable with as your second quarterback in a Superflex league. Whereas right now, Jackson Dart's a pretty easy quarterback to play in Superflex and a borderline kind of streaming option, matchup-based option in your one quarterback league. So, if somebody out there was still the other way around on that, I would gladly trade Cam Ward for Jackson Dart. But my guess is nobody would be doing that. Not much else here. A nice game for Wan'Dale Robinson. I would like to see him kind of keep it up a little bit. I think he's kind of fine as a wide receiver 3 and going forward with a couple of spike games maybe. If someone is willing to buy him from you is more than that, I would be willing to probably check out here for probably a second in a super flex league, any second, and then maybe anything I thought would be a good second in a one quarterback league, I would pretty easily check out for. Otherwise, I think it's probably just a case of where you can be happy where you got him, start him now, and then we'll see how everything shakes out in the offseason. Still like Theo Johnson here, kind of as a long-term buy, especially in tight end premium, but it's going to be up and down with the entire offense, really, but it's always up and down for a young tight end, so no real surprise. He kind of had a quiet game after the big 2-touchdown spike game the week before. Across the pond, over in London, we had the Broncos barely beating the Jets. It's hard to feel excited about basically any part of this Broncos offense right now. The big kind of sophomore leap for Bo Nix hasn't happened. J.K. Dobbins has been fine. Evan Ingram's been disappointing. Franklin and Mims have spiked. Cortland Sutton, again, probably a little bit disappointing here. The schedule is going to ease up a little bit going forward, so I think these guys are all probably holds for me. I've been a little bit higher than most, I think, on Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims Jr. I do think this is an offense that could put it all together in the second half, so while I'm not going and buying on the dip here, because I don't think there really is that much of a dip, to be honest, maybe you can try to buy RJ Harvey right now. It's probably going to be a little bit of mixed results here for the rest of the season, but if they don't keep Dobbins, I do think it'll set up going forward for him to be a nice piece, but you're going to have a bit of patience. I could see his owners maybe getting a little bit frustrated, but I think that it's pretty much just a hold all around on the Broncos side. On the Jets side, this was a very, 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 very frustrating game. They tried to feed Breece Hall, couldn't do anything. Justin Fields famously lost more yardage and sacks than he made throwing the ball down the field in the air. Garrett Wilson got hurt. Mason Taylor did almost nothing here. It's really tough, man. I had a chance to sell my last couple of Fields shares in the offseason here after week 1. The big game, I thought about it. I went through the whole, I've come this far, I've held this long, I've gone through all this. I'm not going to give up the ghost now, and sometimes that's a really dangerous way to think in Dynasty. You need to be willing to check out when the value is at the highest, as long as you kind of have another option. It kind of worked out on those couple of teams. I didn't really have another option, and I didn't want to trade them just for picks and leave myself to figure it out, but lo and behold, you probably could have made do with Joe Flacco, Carson Wentz, Mac Jones, and, kind of just string it along as that kind of happens every year in Superflex especially. So It is what it is. I don't think you can sell Fields at this point. I'm holding Brees Hall, hoping that he either gets traded or goes to a new team next year. I probably have some interest in buying low on Garrett Wilson. If I'm a team that's not really contending this year, I think I'll take a shot, but I am worried about the state of the Jets going forward. Kind of same thing for Mason Taylor. If somebody was kind of worried and they're just trying to check out of the Jets, I might have some interest, but right now it's going to be tough to start any of these guys. So I think you really kind of have to approach this whole situation with caution. As do you with the Arizona Cardinals situation. You have to be real cautious here. It's not great for Kyler Murray that Jacoby Brissett stepped in and more or less did better than Murray had done in any game this year without having Murray's rushing upside. He got Marvin Harrison involved early. Trey McBride looked like more of a complete player. He didn't forget about him in the red zone. It kind of is what it is. If you own Murray, I think you have to pick up Brissett, but the Cardinals have Green Bay this week, then they're on a bye. I don't think Murray will be out past the bye. I don't think Brissett's a long-term option. We've seen him kind of get diminishing returns the longer he is in there, but for 1 or 2 games, he could be useful. A solid enough handcuff for Murray. So if you're looking for somebody to play in Superflex next week, or if you own Murray, I think he's kind of worth picking up there, but I probably wouldn't go with too big of a bid. If anybody will give you anything for one of the non-Benson Cardinals running backs, take it. If someone wants to buy Bam Knight, Michael Carter, even James Conner, go ahead, take what you can get here. I'm pretty confident this is more or less going to be Benson's job when he returns. Might not be for him but in the interim, it's just going to be a hot hand situation. Wouldn't even shock me at all if the Cardinals bring in yet another running back on top of this. So if anybody's willing to give you something of value for one of these guys, go ahead, take it and check out. Not much on the Colts side of the ball. Again, pretty solid all the way around, more or less kind of what we were expecting. Tyler Warren looks great. Nice to see Josh Downs have another good game here. I'm kind of holding. I don't think anyone's going to give you anything for him. So again, maybe if he puts together another good week after this, you can maybe think about it. The demotion of A.D. Mitchell might have helped him out a little bit, but it does seem that any given week you have Pittman, Downs, and Warren, and only two of them are going to have useful fantasy days. And I think that's just going to be the situation going forward, unless the Colts are finally put into a position where they're playing from behind and are really going to have to air it out. So just kind of keep that in mind. And as far as A.D. Mitchell, if I'm in a really, really deep league and I'm rebuilding, I don't mind taking the plunge for almost nothing. I still like the talent. I think he could emerge long term here. Maybe this is one of those big mistakes that's ultimately a great learning moment. But other than that, yeah, it's if you use kind of an early second round pick on him last year, yeah, that's probably a sunk cost already. So, you got to do what you got to do here. Again, if you're a contending team in a deeper league and you need to cut him at this point, and there's someone who can help you out there, I think you probably need to make the move. Maybe the biggest question going into the Chargers Dolphins game was which Chargers running back did you want, Kamani Vidal or Hassan Haskins? The answer wound up being pretty emphatically Kamani Vidal. Luckily, that was the guy I was on for the most part, basically because of his upside in the passing game, big playability. We saw both of those things happen here. Broke off a couple of big runs and caught a touchdown. If you picked up Haskins, especially if you burned a bunch of fab on him, I'm still holding him for at least another week, see how this shakes out. It could ultimately be a hot hand situation. They could even bring somebody else into the mix still. But right now, it looks like the arrow is kind of pointed up for Vidal. And I liked him last year. So even though I've just picked him up in a bunch of leagues, I'm probably not actively trying to flip him for a profit here. If somebody comes calling or if he's not going to make it into my starting lineup over the next 5 or 6 weeks, then I think that's a case of where I could sell him. But for the most part, I'm willing to just kind of take my chances here, especially because we don't know how long Hampton will be out for. Kind of sucks that Quentin Johnston was out, but he has had a bunch of different kind of injury issues, so it wasn't really a surprise. Nice to see Lad McConkey kind of step up, fill the void. They also brought rookie Trey Harris kind of immediately into the mix here. He's a guy I've been seeing getting cut in some more shallow formats like the FFPC, and I am trying to tuck him wherever possible. I don't know what you're going to get this year, but if I can find a way to hold him into next season, I really think he could have a nice role, as God forbid they bring Keenan Allen back for yet another year, which probably depends on the cost more than anything at this point. And also nice to see the breakout game for Oronde Gadsden II, the rookie tight end. He kind of been slowly working his way up the totem pole here. You had all the rest of the Chargers tight ends healthy, and he was still out there near the team leader in targets, looking very good. Act as a nice check down here for Herbert. So arrows pointed way up for him. If he is still out there, I'm going to go pretty heavily with my fab bids on him. And on the Dolphin side of the ball, there's not much you can do. I think I'm holding Waddle. I would sell Darren Waller if anybody is buying, given the age. I'm not optimistic about this being any production even throughout the rest of this season, much less into next season. Devin Achan's the real question here. He looked great. His value is very, very high. it just feels like this might be as good as it gets for him. So this is probably the moment where you should theoretically be willing to check out. But right now, I just don't know how the Dolphins do anything else, and they're going to have to lean on him. So it's proving difficult to do so. So I think I'm hanging on, but the temptation is to at least look around and see if anybody would pay the iron price, give me a straight up Godfather offer for him. I don't know, man. I'm just very worried about investing in the Dolphins long term here. I don't know that you're going to get what's worth it to check out a Waddle, but for Achane, somebody really might give you the sun, the moon, the stars, the world, and everything in it. And if that's the case, I think you have to at least be a little bit interested. And again, if you own Tua in two quarterback superflex, you're pretty much just stuck riding out to the end unless somebody comes looking to buy him specifically from you. Maybe it's damning with faint praise, but I will say that that Patriots and Saints game was at least a little bit more interesting to watch than I thought it was going to be. Drake May looked awesome. He has solidified himself for me as kind of in that second tier of dynasty quarterbacks. I think he's just absolutely great. I feel bad that I really wasn't in on him in the rookie draft, so I don't have any shares in Superflex. I have a few one QB league shares. Wish I had more. If you own him right now, I'm holding on very, 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 very tightly. You can try to buy, but good luck. Not a lot else on the New England side right now. Kayshon Bouttie's going to have the spike games. I'm still kind of low key buying on Kyle Williams where I can. They took one deep shot to him here. I think he is going to have a role eventually. I want players who are going to be playing with Drake May, so I'm willing to kind of play the rating game, the waiting game here. A bit of a disappointing game for Stephon Diggs. Had a couple of big catches that helped in the game, but didn't really produce the kind of usable fantasy numbers we were looking for here. I own two last shares of Diggs, and I was really hoping for one more big game in a row to try to make a push to move on from him. I am continuing to try to do so, but I'm not going to sell him outright at the bottom because, again, I think he could have a pretty good season. You want players hooked up with Drake May here. Kind of sad for the New Orleans side of the ball to hear that Alvin Kamara wants to stay put. That both hurts his value and really kills any chance of a breakout this year from Kendre Miller, barring injury. I have been speculating on him a lot, so that was fairly disappointing. I like Chris Olave. I only have one share. I've been kind of looking to add him on the cheap in the offseason, and no one was really selling. At this point, I think he's just kind of one of those guys based on the age, the situation, the concussion history. It's really tough to buy him for a low price, but you're not going to get what you want for selling him. So he really kind of winds up being a hold here. I almost hope he moves on. I'd like to see what he does in a better situation with a little bit more of an explosive environment, but at least he is getting the lion's share of the kind of alpha targets here for the Saints. So if you own him, start him comfortably. Hope he stays healthy, see how it works out, but I don't know if there's much else you can do there. In the Browns at Steelers game, David Njoku left in the fourth quarter with a knee injury. They have a week 9 bye. I'd expect him to be out past that. So it is officially wheels up time for rookie Harold Fannin Jr. The tight end had already been among the most involved players on that offense. With Njoku out, his role figures to continue to grow. Obviously, despite the quiet game from Quinshawn Judkins, he has been fantastically impressive thus far. Still kind of buying low on Isaiah Bond or picking him up if he is out there in shallow leagues. Not much you can do with Jerry Jeudy at this point. I would probably be looking to try to check out if he can string together a couple of good games. It's questionable whether or not he will be able to do so. Dylan Gabriel was fine, but probably not good enough to make me feel like we're not going to see Shedeur Sanders in there at some point. It feels like everybody's going to get their shot before the Browns ultimately draft a quarterback very high in next year's draft. We'll see how it goes, but it kind of is what it is on the Browns side of the ball. Try to invest in those rookies and hope for better days ahead. The Steelers, they got another team kind of are who they are. I'm trying to sell DK Metcalf still. He's getting it done on kind of just, 5 targets a game. I don't think that's sustainable. I'm worried kind of about how his skill set is going to age as his athleticism wanes. So I'm still trying to check out where possible. But again, I'm not selling just for the sake of selling. I generally want a decent first and a little something else on top of it, or at least that's what I'm starting out asking for, which is generally a fair ask. But again, this time of year, it can be tough to make deals as teams try to decide if they're really going to go for it or not. But you always kind of want to be on the forefront of those discussions. Kenneth Gainwell continues to get it done. Jalen Warren was back. He was healthy. Gainwell did enough to still get almost 10 PPR points. I think you're going to see that continue throughout the season. This is kind of going to be a 60-40 backfield situation. So Gainwell offers some running back 3/flex upside here with also high-end handcuff upside. So he should not be available in any leagues. I would not be paying to acquire him, but if I own him, I think I'm holding because I don't think anyone's going to give you kind of what he is worth in value to you right now. And then at tight end, I think the Steelers are trying to make Darnell Washington happen. It seems like they're really going to feature him. Be like, all right, you think you're a tight end? Here we go. We're going to throw you the ball. If he can catch it, There is so much potential there for a player that big and that athletic. It's amazing. If it doesn't happen, I would expect them to move him officially to tackle at some point. But for now, he is absolutely killing any value that Johnny Smith and Freiermuth have. Makes it tough to start any of them. But Washington is basically out there in almost all leagues, and he is probably the one I'm interested in speculating on just a touch here in case it ever did happen for him. He is such like a unicorn player that I think you have to at least kind of go ahead and take the shot there if he's out there, especially in deeper tight end premium formats. So it'll be a fun one. If nothing else, it'll be a fun player to watch. The Dallas at Carolina game was surprisingly fun to watch. Rico Dowdle did it again, 200 plus scrimmage yards, backed up his smack talk against the Cowboys. If someone's willing to give you a first or something for him right now, I would check out. Otherwise, I think you enjoy the ride. Do not be the dude in your league that is now taking Chuba Hubbard and going out and asking for a first round pick for him. Don't be that guy. I'm not even going to spend too much time on it. Just the ship has sailed. You missed the window. Don't be that guy. I guess I would try to cash out Bryce Young and Superflex if anybody's believing it. It's these really weird scenarios at home against bad defenses in the second half. It's just not sustainable. I don't see it happening. I don't think anyone's giving you a first in Superflex. But at this point, I might be willing to be creative and take a second in a sweetener or something like that. If you can get it, go ahead. If he's on the road at the Jets this week and face plants, any selling window I think you had is going to slam shut. So just be careful. You do have Jalen Coker and Jatavian Sanders possibly returning. So that could be a little bit of a help there. Hunter Renfro's been fine. I mean, you've gotten a little bit on Tommy Tremble. Some of these other guys, Xavier Legette continues to disappoint. Ted McMillan found the end zone twice. Love him. Just curious as to who's going to be throwing the ball to him next year. Once again, just start all of your offensive players against Dallas. This is also the time where you could consider trying to move on from George Pickens with it look like CeeDee Lamb's going to return in the next week or two. I love the talent for Pickens. Just the way he's carried himself over the course of his career thus far scares me. It seems like right now he is in the absolute perfect environment. I don't know how it's going to work when Lamb gets back. I don't know if he's going to be with the Cowboys next year. I'm a bit scared with the unknown of where he lands or what happens here. He's been so good that it's hard to check out on the talent, but I do own a bunch of shares, so I will probably try to move on for a couple. But again, I'm not going to just move him for the sake of moving him. I want probably the equivalent of like an early to mid first, maybe a late first and a sweetener, something like that. Again, it depends on your roster construction or what you need here. If you just own one or two shares, I think it's fine to go ahead and ride it out, see how it works. The Cowboys are obviously going to have to air it out quite a bit because that defense is going to let everybody get theirs. But I am worried going forward. I don't really know how the Cowboys can pay Pickens even without having paid Micah Parsons. So it's just a little bit skeptical for going forward. So if you own a bunch of shares, I think it's just smart to diversify a little bit. I'm still probably holding on to Javonte Williams here. A little bit of a disappointing game. Not really a surprise. If somebody came with a first, I would probably consider it. It's probably a fair price. I don't know if he's going to keep this up long term, but he's looked so good so far this season that I'm not really willing to, just check out for the sake of checking out here. He's still pretty young. It's just that knee injury was so bad, but he's had a couple of years now. Perhaps he's really coming back for it. So I loved his talent at one point, so I'm trying to believe but not believe it in a rational fashion. You know what I mean? It's a little bit tough with a player like that who you love and kind of fell off and then they come back. It's worked out for the people buying back in on Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, so hopefully it works in a similar fashion here for Javonte Williams. The Seattle at Jacksonville game was a good one from an NFL standpoint, but probably not a ton of takeaways for our dynasty and season-long fantasy leagues. Sam Darnold continues to look pretty good here. You have to be pretty encouraged if you took a shot on him late in your draft or you picked him up with Fab last year in a Superflex league, something like that. Not an every week starter in one QB, but I think he solidified himself as an every week starter in Superflex leagues. He continues to be a crapshoot at the running back position. At this point, I'm just holding my Walker and Charbonnet shares. I'm hoping Walker ends up somewhere else next year, and it winds up benefiting both them. He gets a new start. Charbonnet gets kind of a clear crack at the main gig here. I don't know what else you can do otherwise. Disappointing game from Torrey Horton, only the one target. I am still trying to acquire and tuck him where I can. I believe in the talent, but he's probably not a guy that you can really put out there unless you're in a jam. Jackson Smith and Jigba is dominating. He has probably risen into either that top tier of dynasty wide receivers or right there in that second tier. Tons to love here. If you held on for the first kind of couple of lean years like I did, congratulations, reaping the benefits now. So I am holding on for dear life here. You can try to buy, but good luck. I don't think anybody is doing it unless you may be willing to throw Jamar Chase out there. And at this point, without Burrow, what's crazy is the JSN owner would probably have to think about it. So that's the kind of air he is breathing right now. He is way up there. On the Jaguars side of the ball, nice to see Brian Thomas Jr. bounce back a little bit. Trevor Lawrence does look like he is on an upward trajectory, which is nice. Travis Hunter got 7 targets here, I think. It's nice to see him more involved, but he is a player who I'm probably going to try to move on from as soon as he has a couple of good games here. I just don't know that he's ever going to get the role on offense he needs to be the wide receiver 1 or 2. He's going to need to pay off the draft capital. I hate to kind of check out for a late first for a player who's so young and so talented, but if you're not getting any IDP credit for his points, other than the interception return for a touchdown, I just don't think the juice is going to be worth the squeeze long term. So I'm also still probably trying to check out on Travis Etienne where I can. Not checking out for less than a first, though. I could see him having kind of an Aaron Jones-like career, leaving the Jaguars next year and still being a useful dynasty and fantasy option for a couple years. So I'm not checking out just for the sake of checking out, but I am also still trying to buy Bayshal Tootin, as I think he is the future of the position here for the Jaguars. And under Liam Cohen, it seems pretty clear that they're going to try to run the rock. So Tootin remains a pretty strong buy for me. Not really fun to watch the Rams at Ravens game. If you own Derrick Henry, it was nice to see the Ravens be able to focus on him, pound the rock, and let him have his day. Unfortunately, there really wasn't anything else useful on the side of the ball. The good news is the Ravens are on a bye. Hopefully, Lamar Jackson returns after that. If not, there are going to be some major questions. The Rams' offense was pretty bad without Puka Nacua. Devontae Adams is certainly startable on his own, but defenses are going to pay a ton of attention to him. I don't know that I'm really going to do much in terms of chasing Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, these kind of guys on the bye week here. I mean, the Rams have one more game and then they're on the bye. Puka's probably back after that. So again, I'm probably just holding on here. Still trying to move Kyron Williams where I can if anybody is buying. Excited about Blake Corum. Did pick up an injury here. Just a guy I'm kind of stashing on my bench. I've seen him cut in some more shallow formats. I wouldn't mind vulture buying on the cheap. I don't know that Williams is the answer long term. He has the fumbling issue. We'll see how it goes next week when he has to be more of a focal point of the offense. If he has a really good volume-based game, might be another good spot to sell. But if he falls flat on his face, we give him more opportunities. It's also going to kind of hurt his perceived value. So something to think about, especially if you own a bunch of shares of Kyron Williams. Not really much else you can do here. I do like Terrence Ferguson, the rookie tight end for the Rams, but he is still clearly kind of third in the pecking order. So if you can tuck him in a shallow tight end premium format, totally worth it. But otherwise, I think you're going to have to be cautious because I don't know if he's going to be startable at any point this season. Did see Tyler Higbee find the end zone this week, but again, another guy who's probably past his sell-by date there. Mentioned the nice game from Derrick Henry, but I don't think there's much you can do. I think you've reached the point with Henry, much like Christian McCaffrey, you're not going to get what he's worth in trade. If somebody comes calling and they're willing to pay full sticker price, I would probably do it. But shopping him around, I don't think it's not going to be worth your energy. The best case scenario is you're probably going to get about 80 cents on the dollar. I think at this point, especially if you're a contending team, just go ahead, ride it out with King Henry. And the Titans-Raiders game wasn't quite as ugly as I thought. It didn't set offensive football back by a decade, but it really wasn't a ton of fun. Bad enough to get Titans coach Brian Callahan fired. If you can get anything for Tony Pollard or Calvin Ridley, I'm doing it. I'm still kind of mildly buying Tony. I'm still kind of mildly buying Tajay Spears, Elick Ayomanor, Chiyon Konkwo, Gunnar Helm. Cam Ward is just a hold in Superflex. I don't know what you can do. I still have some hope for the future, but right now it's been really tough to evaluate him, given the situation on offense. We'll see what happens going forward. And right now, again, there's not much you can do but hold on to these guys. Kind of the same thing on the Raiders side of the ball. Janty's doing his best. Nice to see Michael Mayer with the big fill-in game. I would love for the Raiders to move him next year so he could potentially get a starting role somewhere. I was very high on him coming out of Notre Dame. A very good tight end prospect. He's just not Brock Bowers, but I think he could be a very nice dynasty fantasy tight end if he can wind up somewhere else. So if you're in a deep enough league where you think you can hold him into the offseason, I would certainly do so. Otherwise, he just profiles as a streamer while Bowers is out. But that could be be a couple more weeks as they try to get Bowers as healthy as possible. So just something to keep an eye on there. Again, not much you can really do with the Raiders' ancillary pieces. Your Trey Tuckers, your Jacoby Myers, they kind of are what they are. I don't really want a piece of either of these teams right now. Obviously Bowers and Genty are very good long-term foundational pieces, but it looks like the Raiders have a lot of work to do otherwise, even more so for the Titans on the offensive side of the ball. The Packers took care of business against the Bengals. Joe Flacco showed enough to prove that he's a useful kind of lower end quarterback too in your 2 QB and super flex leagues, and that he can keep Jamar Chase and T. Higgins afloat, maybe even Chase Brown. That would be nice. Mike Gesicki looks like he had a pec injury here. That's going to put Noah Fant in the primary pass catching tight end role. Could be useful there. Maybe it could be a springboard for him finding a starting gig somewhere else. Still only about 27 years old. Love the upside of the former first round pick here. Bengals should be behind, airing it out. So Flacco is certainly not going to be the cure to all of what ails them, but perhaps he can be a little bit better than Browning was and at least allow you to keep your Bengals players in your lineups. Again, not much you can really do here unless you want to take a shot on buying Joe Burrow in 2 QB Superflex, trying to kind of buy the injury dip here. Don't know if the owners will be selling, but it might be worth a shot. Hopefully they can get Chase Brown going a little bit. He has quietly been one of the most disappointing running backs on the season so far. Not much to say about the Packers. They are who they are at this point. It does look like the injuries have successfully whittled down the rotation enough that you can kind of comfortably start Matthew Golden and Romeo Dubs right now. Still a big fan of Tucker Kraft. Definitely buying Golden and Kraft where possible. Jordan Love is fine. Josh Jacobs is fine. I'm probably looking to check out from Jacobs sooner or later, but I would get why you would want to hold on if you're a contender here. The Packers are going to be very happy to feed him whenever possible, and it looks like they should get the chance to do so coming up in a couple of decent matchups here. But I do worry that Jacobs has had a bit of an injury history. He's been inconsistent. He wasn't nearly as good as your box scores would make you think he was last year. So definitely a player I am still trying to move on from if somebody is willing to give me fair value for him. And I give credit to Mac Jones. The 49ers weren't able to beat the Buccaneers, but he got pounded. He hung in there, playing injured without much to work with at wide receiver. Can't believe Kendrick Bourne had yet another 100-yard receiving game. It just goes to show you start all of your passing game options against the Bucs. They are that passing game funnel. Everyone is going to throw against them. They're going to be involved in a lot of shootouts, it looks like. So go ahead, roll everyone against the Bucs. I think Jones has done enough for you to hold him in your deeper Superflex 2 quarterbacks leagues in hopes of him possibly having a shot at a starting job somewhere next year, or maybe even getting some more fill-in starts for Purdy down the stretch. Not much you can do with the rest of your 49ers. I think you're just holding all these guys, waiting to see what happens when everyone returns. Much like Derrick Henry, if somebody comes to you willing to pay full retail price for Christian McCaffrey, I am probably checking out. Otherwise, I think I'm just holding on to my final McCaffrey share here and just going down with the ship, hoping he can give me a couple more years of production, even if his role kind of changes to where he's mostly just a guy who's an option in the passing game. I think that'll be enough to kind of sustain him as at least a high-end RB2 into his 30s. So there's no reason to kind of, check out unless you need to. Does sound like George Kittle could be back in week 7, maybe Ricky Parasol. Juwan Jennings is apparently playing with 5 cracked ribs, so I don't know how well that's going to work out for him long term. He is probably going to need an extended absence at some point. So the 49ers are kind of a mess, but they are what they are. The Bucs are a little bit of a hot mess of their own. He had a Emeka Egbuka. He had a hamstring here. Going for an MRI does not sound like it's going to be something that keeps him out for the rest of the season, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on as he'll probably miss a couple of games. Mike Evans has a shot at returning in week 7, but it sounds like Godwin will be out. That's going to create a target vacuum. I do like Cade Otton. He is out there in a bunch of shallow formats. He's seen his role increase the last 2 weeks. I think he could continue to do so over the next 2 weeks. I think they're at Detroit this week. Shapes up to be another shootout, so I really love Otton as a streamer here. I think they get the Saints after that, so that's kind of a nice 2-week streaming option if nothing else for Otton. Sterling Shepard could be useful over the next couple of weeks. It's kind of wide receiver 3-4 in PPR leagues. Get you 8 to 12 points. And then you have the Johnsons. I don't know what to do. I mean, they both scored touchdowns. It's kind of nice here. You got Cameron and Tez, no relation, Special Agent Johnson. If you want to throw Fab at one of them as kind of a streamer for the next week or two, go for it. I'm still probably a bigger fan of Tez Johnson, but I would take whoever I get for 1 or 2% of my Fab. I think outside of deep leagues, these are probably guys you're going to throw back after a week or two. So, again, take the plunge if you want to use them as a streaming option, but I probably wouldn't get too invested long term. I mean, people are still forgetting they have Jalen McMillan coming back at some point. So the Bucks have a really deep bench of wide receivers. It's going to be tough for any of these guys to really maintain long-term value here. And it's probably hard to argue with Baker Mayfield as a borderline MVP candidate at this point. But if you were one of those people who bought the dip on Baker after he was cut from the Panthers, went to the Rams over there, you might be the real MVP because that has been probably a league-winning transaction for you again, especially in your two quarterback superflex leagues. I actually picked him up in one and then let him go in the final run of cut down. So that one is still smarting for me. I'm not going to let that one go for a while. The Detroit Kansas City game was fun, but Kansas City controlled it to a much greater degree than I would have thought. The Lions kind of are what they are. I will say this slam shut any buying window on Jamison Williams. He'd had a couple of slow games in a row, turned it around here, had the nice game, as did Laporta. So it kind of is what it is. I have mild interest in checking out on David Montgomery, but only at the right price. I have one share. No one's really been interested for a year and a half, so I've kind of accepted. I'm probably going down with the ship. I think he could continue to have value at least through next season, but if somebody came calling, I would certainly be listening. On the Chiefs side of the ball, kind of enjoy it while it lasted here with Hollywood Brown. Found the end zone twice, but we're getting Rashee Rice back. I think my main takeaway was my disappointment that Tyquan Thornton wasn't even targeted here. I don't know how he fell off the radar so entirely. It does look like Xavier Worthy is still being used more as a gadget player. The shoulder is doing better than I thought. After that initial injury, I really didn't know how useful he would be this season, so it's nice to see him out there. But I think the entire Chiefs offense is just going to be a wait and see proposition until we see what happens with Rashee Rice coming back into the mix now that his suspension is over. I am continuing to buy rookie running back Rashard Smith where I can. It continues to only have a small role in the passing game, but the coaching staff's talking him up. I have confidence his role is going to grow down the stretch. I think he could be useful in the fantasy playoffs here, and then maybe the guy primarily responsible for their passing game work at the running back position in 2026. So you got to have a little bit of patience here, but I am there for it. And I'm even tucking rookie fourth round wide receiver Jalen Royals where I can still. In your deeper leagues, that one's probably going to take at least until next year to come to fruition, but we could see a bunch of guys clear out there, and he'd have a shot probably at the wide receiver 3 role next season. So in a deeper league, someone to keep your eye on. The Buffalo Bills suffered a disappointing loss to the Atlanta Falcons in the first Monday Night Football game. Not a lot of takeaways on the Bills side other than to say they definitely struggle without Dalton Kincaid out with an oblique. Keep an eye on that. Bills are on a bye this week in week 7. Right now, it might be tough to start anybody other than Kincaid, Josh Allen, and James Cook. I love the long-term potential of Keon Coleman, but really struggled here going up against a good corner. And AJ Terrell disappeared a little bit from the game plan. You don't like to see that. Khalil Shakir hasn't had that high floor we've seen him have the past couple of years. So he's really not a guy you can trust as that weekly wide receiver 3 in PPR, whereas you could before. I think all of these guys are still strongholds for me. Hopefully the Bills get it together off the bye. I think they get a matchup at Carolina coming out of the bye, which would be a good chance for them to get back on track. So again, I'm pretty strongholds here still. I'm not that worried about the Bills. I have confidence in them figuring out, but they've been pretty disappointing over the last couple of weeks, especially the wide receivers. And shout out the Atlanta Falcons. They're finally just doing it. They're just feeding the ball to Bijan Robinson, to Drake London, and to a lesser degree, Tyler Algier and Kyle Pitts. That's where all the touches should go. That's where all the touches should go. It worked like gangbusters here. This was the breakout game everyone has been waiting forever for Drake London. Absolutely love that. On a ton of London. Same thing with Bijan here. I think he's done enough to re-solidify himself as my RB1 in Dynasty, despite being a couple of years older than Ashton Genty here. Just looked absolutely fantastic, as did Tyler Algier. I would love to see what he would do with a crack at a starting gig somewhere, but that's still not going to happen for a little bit. Just remains one of the more elite handcuffs. Not much you can do here. I don't think you can really buy any of these guys. So just kind of enjoy him if you have him. Not looking to sell high. Penix is still just a hold in super flex. I don't have a ton of interest in one QB, but nice to see him kind of split the difference here between taking the shot on a couple of big plays and also being a solid game manager. Big step forward from that horrible performance he had at Carolina, but there were still a couple of pretty bad passes and decisions here. So I'm still a little bit kind of undetermined on his long-term outcome. But but for now, I'm still holding him again in my two quarterback superflex leagues. And we finished things off with the number one and number two picks from last year's draft facing off. The Bears managed to take down the Commanders on a last second field goal. Great game for DeAndre Swift. If you still own him, I absolutely think this is the time to check out. This is an outlier a little bit. He looked so good. I know it's going to be tough to check out. That's exactly why you should. He has a long history with Ben Johnson that suggests that he is not a great fit for this offense. I don't really trust him long term here. He's been better with the injuries in recent years. I just think he's the guy that's going to bounce around from team to team now on 1 year contracts going forward. If someone's really willing to give you, a late first and an early second, a second and a player, something like that, I think I'm strongly considering it. Again, unless I'm a contender and I have to start him every week and I can't get another or better running back in return. Nice to see Luther Burden more involved here. Hope his role grows going forward. Still kind of wild that Olamide Zacchaeus led the Bears in targets with 6. That is absolutely killing me, but I'm still a big fan of Burden. It kind of sucks for DJ Moore. They're trying to get him involved, even having him rush the ball. Kind of crazy news. Unexpectedly, he was in there at the end of the game. He wound up being hospitalized and had to stay overnight in Washington in the hospital. No idea what that was due to. It's so weird. I almost wonder if it was like an appendix or some sort of illness or something. It seemed to come out of nowhere, but keep your eyes on that one. I kind of think Moore is going to wind up on a new team one way or the other next year. So he is just a hold for me. I'm definitely trying to buy Burden. Romo Dunes didn't do much here, but I don't think anyone is selling. You're holding on to him. Colston Loveland out targeted Cole Kmet, but it was 2-1, so don't get too excited. I like the talent of Loveland, but again, it's probably going to take a year or two here. You're going to have patience. I'm willing to buy him if I am a full-on rebuilder. No way I'm contending this season, but I'm not really paying the full price here. I think you have a lot of other interesting young options at tight end that are probably going to get a quicker route to having a real role here. As long as he's splitting time with Komet and the Bears have 3 good wide receivers, there's just no way Loveland is going to carve it out. So if you burned a high draft pick on him, go ahead, keep him on your bench, but I don't know there's much else you can do right now. If somebody's willing to come calling and they're willing to pay you the equivalent of that kind of, mid to late first round pick for him, I would certainly consider selling it. You might regret it 2 years from now, but right now it's really tough to see him having a role for the rest of this season, and there's no guarantee that he's immediately going to kind of take over next year. I'm getting shades of Dalton Kincaid here. We're seeing it start to really happen for Kincaid in year 3, but it was really tough last year. You kind of hold on. No one, you really couldn't buy him for the cheap, but no one was really. It's just a tough situation, man. So again, it's one of those players you like the talent. So it kind of sucks to tell you that you were really excited about him, but right now you just got to sit him on the bench. Have some patience. I don't know what else you can do again, unless you want to kind of check out for, if you get 90 cents on the dollar, I think I'm doing it. If I can buy for 70 cents on the dollar, I'm doing it. But if you're kind of stuck in that 80 cents on the dollar mid range here, I think you just hang on to Loveland, hope for better times ahead. Kyle Monangai kind of operated as the clear-cut running back 2 here. So if he's available in shallow leagues, pick him up. I can see his role grow down the stretch. He's solid in the passing game. Probably means that it's not going to happen for Roschon Johnson. Best case scenario for him probably is to wind up on a new team next year and hopefully gets a shot. About all you can do. On the Commanders side of the ball, nice to see some of the young wide receivers stepping forward. Luke McCaffrey had another touchdown here. Not quite sure what his role will be when Terry McLaurin returns, but I like the long-term potential. Same thing for Jalen Lane. I had 2 targets, 1 long catch here. He's looked very good in the receiving game. Explosive player, I think ultimately is going to be a nice long-term option. So I like kind of tucking Lane and McCaffrey where I can in deeper leagues. They're paired up long-term with Jaden Daniels. Lot to like. Might not be able to start him right away this season, but I think in 2026 and beyond, you'll be happy if you can get exposure to these players. And somehow, I think that was about it. We made it through all the games. There's definitely at least 9 buys, sells, and holds in there. A lot of action this week. Not as many injuries, but still a few. There always are. I'm sure if you're one of those teams that owns Emeka Egbuka and Puka Nacua and Brock Bowers, I have a team where I own 2 of the 3. You're just like, why me, God, why? But that's how it works in fantasy. That's how it works in Dynasty. And that's why we're here to help you every week on Nine Guys Dynasty Football. Thanks again for checking out the show. We are presented by Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. Find our content wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Seize the Gap FF and on the World Wide Web at SeizeTheGapFF.com. Nice and easy to remember, just like those flaps. FLAPS. Very critical to our success. follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please touch the thumb. I'm Magnum Mills. Thanks again for checking out the show, and we'll be back to help you again next week on Nine Guys Dynasty.
We want you all to listen close to what I say. This here's something funky, and it's rock by Kid and Play. Don't worry about the message, cause that's really up to you. The hook is kinda catchy, so I know you'll like it too. Just step out